What's happening, everybody? Coast to Coast Podcast coming at you. I am Joey Powell from inside Carolina. With me, as always, Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran. Boys, thanks for joining us. We're brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Guys, this past week saw the North Carolina Tar Heels win a very workmanlike game at home against Cal. Cal is not a very good team, as we previewed last week. And then I saw a North Carolina team look as lifeless and as unmotivated in the last 6 minutes of the game as I've ever seen them look this year against Stanford, and they lose a game to a Stanford team at home that is a quad 3 loss, and I don't know another way to explain it other than just garbage. It's a bad loss. I don't know how to shake it. Jalen Blakes and, oh my God, Renault, the Flying Frenchman absolutely gave North Carolina all that they wanted to. Maxime Renault, I don't know why I couldn't do that. He should have absolutely known it because he was all over the stat sheet all day against the Tar Heels. Guys, another 1-1 week, but again, that step back against Stanford is going to be very, very punitive, methinks, for a team that, again, I know some people online may have struggled to understand what I meant when I said this, but North Carolina had won 4 games in a row. Independent of competition, 4 wins is a good thing because that's how they judge sports, is did you win or not? And North Carolina had won 4 in a row, and then they come out and just gag one away against Stanford after a very yeoman-like effort against and a big point distance win against Cal. Sean, I'm coming to you first. What the hell did we learn this past week?
I think we learned that the offense continues to struggle, and even I think we've been calling for more Ian Jackson and RJ, but once again, they're prone to bad games, and we saw Ian struggle against Stanford, and even when they had four guards out there and they're swinging the ball around, you have 2 guards that are not great shooters. So, and then when you add for Stanford, having kind of the unicorn of a very talented big that pretty much closed the paint off, it limited UNC's opportunities. And I think we all expected them to beat Cal, and they did so handily, even though I think there were some warning signs in that game when really from the 4.5 minute mark to halftime, and then the first 3 minutes in the second half, they might have only had one 3-pointer. So once again, a big offensive lull that they could able to withstand against Cal. But then Stanford, with 10 minutes to go, it kind of felt like we kind of know where this is going in terms of UNC not playing up to maybe their level of play and letting an opponent hang around. And then up 4 points, they had missed some prime opportunities to push the lead. And, then all of a sudden it's a back and forth game. So, I think we saw some things with Washington in terms of him playing well at times, but also, continuing to make, head-shaking decisions. So, once again, I think last week we closed it out. One of my thoughts in the 2 pennies was the 3-point shooting. It seemed like that had been trending up, and they took a step backwards, making 5 threes in both games, and the Stanford game shooting below 30%. So, once again, the offense it continues to be subpar, and that right now is probably pointing towards a not a tournament team right now, which is frustrating, especially going into a much tougher 2 to 3 week home stretch. So I know we had talked in end of December, what do we think they would be in January? And I think we can go back and look, but I think we talked about 6-3 being realistic, and I think they're headed towards that. But I think knowing what is to come, probably hoping that they finish this week 2-0 against the California teams.
Yeah, a missed opportunity against 2 teams that North Carolina should have been better than. I mean, they were 10-point favorites against Stanford, depending on when you got the line. And John, to your point about shooting 3-pointers, they shot less threes against Cal. You're okay with 5 makes if you only take 13, but when you take 18 and only make 5, it's a little different pill to swallow. Sherrell, what did you learn this week?
That is going to be an up and down roller coaster. Maybe we knew that already, but this is just further proof. I think today or the game against Stanford, pretty much it goes back to the beginning of the season. And I hate to keep bringing everything back, but you knew there was going to be an oopsie game for UNC because every team outside of that one over in Durham seems to have one of those every single year around this time, whether it's the 2009 team to Boston College, I think it was, 2008 team, might have lost to State. Just all the great Carolina teams have an oopsie in January. It happened. So there was no reason to think that it wouldn't happen for this team. And so that's why you needed to beat Michigan State, or you needed to find a way to hold on against Florida, because that was coming. And now a Q3 loss on your resume when you're already on the bubble, it makes life a little tougher. So now you're going to have to go and find probably an extra Q1 win. Wake Forest now becomes a Q1 win. I think they're in the top 75 now on Tuesday. Whether or not they'll stay there, we'll see. But you've got Wake Forest, you've got a Boston College team. You should, I put in quotations, you should beat at home. And then there's that 4-game stretch we've been talking about for about 2 months. So I think I learned that just when you think they're getting better, they're not. And just when you think they're knocked out for the count, they're not. So just expect the inconsistency is what I've learned and continue to learn.
I think that might be the most maddening thing about this team, is that there just is no consistency. Just when you think they've found something they can hang their hat on, it goes away. Sherrell, I've never seen a team that had such a thin margin for error not be able to motivate themselves. Like, I don't know that I've seen this team outside of a preseason exhibition against Memphis and a comeback against Dayton. I don't know that I've seen this team look dialed in for more than about a 2 or 3 minute stretch. And I'm not sure why that is. These guys have played a lot of basketball. Some of these guys have played a lot of basketball together. You do have some veterans on the team. I'm not sure I can explain why this team seems to just not be able to turn it on at any given time. Can you put your finger on that?
Well, I think there are disparate parts, as we've discussed all season with the team. So there's always the guards are the best players on the court, and I think I gotta stop saying I think. I've noticed I say that a lot. I believe, or in my opinion, guards can be a little more erratic because they're shooting from further away. I know that seems very simple, but it's part of that. It's also personality driven. Everybody asks who's the leader on the team, and we've had this discussion before on this podcast, and other people have had the discussion. And there's no clear-cut vocal leader like there was last year when you had the trio of Baycott, Ingram, and Ryan. So it's Hubert Davis's team, and I think he just has maybe struggled or hasn't quite pushed the right buttons to motivate his team, and that's why you're seeing some of the sleepiness from time to time. In addition to that, it's also just like there's got to be some accountability for each individual player to know that you're in a hole. I don't know why that doesn't come through, but coming into this game, you guys have lost 6 games. You don't have a margin for error. You don't have the luxury of sleepwalking through a game and coming on the other side and saying, "Oh, we can turn it on next game." You don't have that luxury. And when you let a team who has at least 2 or 3 pieces hang around, that's what's going to happen. And Stanford, to their credit, is a very, very, very well-coached team.
Incredibly well-coached.
And I think you saw that come through over and over on plays, how he used timeouts, how he subbed Rayno in and out.
Baseline out of bounds play that scored 8 straight points.
Right. How he attacked Jalen Washington at times, how they decided to cover R.J. Davis. The only thing really, I think, for Carolina that was consistent the entire game was Elliot Cadeau. And that leads me kind of, I'm going to segue myself, Joey, to that's if there was a coaching decision in this particular game that I might question. And again, with the caveat, I don't claim to know more about basketball than the head coach of North Carolina. However, I do think folks who cover the team, who know a little bit about basketball, can at least identify trends and say, maybe that wasn't the best decision. This isn't us saying that we know better than the UNC's head coach or anything like that. So I don't want people to think we're know-it-alls, but I thought the usage of Elliot Cadeau today was pretty interesting. And I think a part of being a coach is knowing the feel of a particular game. And this felt like a game where Cadeau should have been given the ball more to kind of run things. I mean, this is one of his better games. Probably, I would say his best game post-Maui, considering the level of competition.
So it makes two games in a row from him as well, Sherrell. That's
right,
really good contribution games in a row. Stats from the Stanford game: 12 points, 6 of 8 from the line, 3 of 4 from the field, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and only had 26 minutes.
And no turnovers.
0.
So, Sean, Joey, I'm going to ask y'all, why do you think there wasn't more Elliot Cadeau, especially down the stretch? Because he got R.J. Davis a wide open three that could have ended it. He got Ian Jackson a wide open three that could have ended it.
Well, I think you do see Seth Trimble with 30 minutes, and once again, I think that goes to some of the challenges of this team's construction of using their most talented players, but I don't think that's a full excuse because you have seen Cadeau get the 30-plus minutes in other games, and once again, with the 0 turnovers, I could see him playing 26 if it was sloppy passes or the 2 assists to 5 turnovers. But when he's playing in control and especially with Stanford mixing his zone with the paint clogged off for the most part, I agree that he was making those shots easier. Some weren't going in, but he was, once again, he is the general out on the floor when he's controlling the ball and pushing it. And I think that's another thing, just not to go off that point, but kind of a frustration is, they played a lower possession game, but still, you have Stanford on, across the country, their second game, their starters were playing high 30s, and they were pushing the ball, but they weren't really getting out in transition. Obviously some of that's defense and rebounding, but they didn't really tire Stanford out, which I think was the hope at the preseason when we talked about how fast this team's going to play. And Stanford probably could have played another few overtimes if they needed to.
Yeah, it was really weird to see Maxime Reynaud get 37 minutes in that game, and then when North Carolina had about I am trying to answer questions, Sherrell. North Carolina had about a 5 or 6 point lead with 5 minutes left to go at home, and then got a couple of straight stops and could not get an offensive set. Like, could not score offensively, could not get a field goal. I don't know how you explain that. That's one of those where, again, we don't know more than the staff, but I think it's absolutely worth criticizing. Why did they take their feet off the gas? Because I looked at what looked like a team trying to take the air out of the ball when it's been proven time and time again, going all the way back to the beginning of the season, that Hubert Davis said he wanted this team to be the fastest team in the country. And like you guys said, against a team that has traveled out all the way from the West Coast and has all of their guys logging, thank you, Sherrell, 5 guys playing 34 more minutes, and North Carolina's up 6, and they decide to take the air out of the ball. I don't understand that, And again, I'm not saying I have the answer, but I would wonder why you would not allow Elliot Cadeau to push tempo a little bit there. Worst case scenario, you do get fouled, and North Carolina has been a decent team at the free throw line. Seth Trimble, to his credit, hit shots down the stretch from the free throw line. They weren't getting field goals, so at least if you try to speed the tempo up, maybe you get some foul calls. I just don't know. But I do. Go ahead.
No, something has to change. I mean,
yes,
we were asked this maybe 2 months ago. It's like, hey, you guys worried about the under 4 offense? And I think the answer I gave was maybe, but let's see what happens. And now you have a pretty demonstrated track record dating back to Alabama last year of under 4 UNC with a 3, 4, 5 point lead, and just the offense not really doing anything, of just running sets to kind of run sets and taking the ball sometimes out of. And let me put it this way: sometimes taking the ball out of the hand of the person it should be in that particular game. So there are some games where yes, it should be in R.J. Davis's hand.
Yeah.
There are some games where it should have been in Ian Jackson's hand, and there are some games where it should be in Elliot Cadeau's hand. There are some games where it should have been in Seth Trimble's hand. Tonight was one of the nights, or Saturday night was one of the nights where it should have been in Elliot Cadeau's hands. And I think if the coaching staff had to go back and review that and maybe have that one back, they would have done more to give Cadeau a chance to create. Because not only was he distributing, but he was getting by his man pretty easily.
When he wanted to, he was able to get to the rim. And he's done that most of the season.
Right. And again, that's not absolving him, because there was a stretch there where he wasn't playing well. You didn't want the ball in his hands, but you have to be able to adapt within the game. And I thought they didn't do, as a coaching staff and as a team, I don't think they did a good job of adapting to how that particular game was played.
I mean, one thing just to add, Joe, you brought up, up really the 3 points and the several possessions they had, and obviously Ian didn't play well, but that 3 looked like it was going going down.
You want him
RJ
to take that shot every time.
Yeah, no issues. And NC State, he hit that big three when they went down and they needed a basket. Looked it was closer than his other shots had been. And then RJ obviously has struggled all year, but once again, when it's not a step back contested shot, you hope it's going in, and it didn't. Excuse me. That pushes it to a 6-point game, and most likely that then it's it. Obviously, when you're in that 4 to 5 point range, which they were, all it takes is that 1 3-pointer, which they got, wide open three in the corner, and now it's everything changes from the pressure and the focus, and now it's a back and forth opportunity, and that's what we've talked so many times about, how there's so many similarities to 2 years ago, and I think that is the type of game that at this point in January, hey, UNC feels like the better team. They didn't put them away, or they didn't build that lead up early enough, and now the last 4 minutes, it's anybody's game. And Notre Dame, they got lucky, hit a big shot. NC State, they finished out, but Stanford, they did not. So, they had some good shots to do it, but
I would almost wonder, and I don't have the game flow charts in front of me to either prove or disprove this. I almost wonder if this team is better being down in the last couple of minutes than they are being ahead. Because at least being down, you've got to scratch and claw for everything. And I'm sure there might be a little bit of lemon booty that comes in when this team has a lead, or for whatever reason. I don't know if it's coming from the bench. I don't know if it's coming from the team or whatever, but they just never look comfortable when it's within a 2 to 3 possession game and they have the lead. It's been like that multiple times this season. And some of that does fall on coaching, right? I'm not going to get on here and be as mad online as so many people want us to be about, fire this guy, fire that guy. But I think it's fair, and I think the coaching staff would probably say the same thing, that some of the adjustments that they made, or to your point, Sherrell, about feeling the flow inside the game, haven't been made or haven't been made properly. And of course, anybody can sit and kind of reverse engineer or use hindsight and play Monday morning quarterback. But I think when you're talking about the flow of the game within the game, I think that's something that Hubert Davis wanted to pride himself on when he was hired, is bringing more of an NBA style. And one thing about NBA coaches is they know how to read a hot hand, or they know how to play a hot hand in the middle of a game. And just, the game against Stanford is another one where you kind of scratch your head about some of the minute distribution. Even with Ian Jackson not being on, there's a lot of questions to be asked. And I think all of them are fair game. But I don't know if some people are expecting us to be like, ripping computers out of the wall and throwing things and setting stuff on fire. It's not really our bag. I will ask this, because I think it's starting to change a little bit. Y'all know I have been a huge proponent of getting some post baskets just by forcing the issue, I guess, a little bit. North Carolina against Stanford and against Cal and a couple other times has started to see some production from the 1-2 punch of Washington and Lubin. Neither one of those guys are dropping 20 and 10, but together against Stanford and against Maxime Renault, who isn't a huge, I guess, your typical big man, but the man had roughly 1,000 block shots today. Against Stanford, against North Carolina on Saturday. I'm all over the place. But Vin Allen Lubin and Jalen Washington combined for 21 points and 9 rebounds out of your post players. North Carolina has to accept that. I share that now, and this is a long way to get to a question, so bear with me. I'm not sure that the post is this team's biggest fatal flaw anymore. So I'd ask you guys. I think there are a couple of other things out there that might be more of an issue than not having that big, Armando Bacot in the post. I'm not saying that what they have is as good as Armando Bacot. Do not put words in my mouth. But I think what they have, when deployed properly, is serviceable enough that the talents around the perimeter should help this team be better than they have shown. All that to say, Sean, do you still feel like the post is the biggest fatal flaw this team has?
I think there's a lot of flaws, and I guess it's almost the flip of what we talked about last week. Is Jalen Washington the missing, the missing piece if he's playing well? And I think it has been nice to see the improvement. The 3-point shots. Would love for him to just keep it within the 15 to 18 feet for now. But when you look at the total point distribution, you have to be happy with that in terms of looking at this team. I think the one issue is the lack of offensive rebounding. Van Allen Lubin had 2, Washington had none. Obviously, a little harder when you've got a 7-footer in there. But I think when you have a team that isn't the greatest shooting team, you need the Roy Williams style bigs to be able to clean up and add those extra shot attempts, which UNC does not have. So from a fatal flaw, I think we got to see what a team looks like with Stanford had the best player on the court, no question today, and I think we got to see what a team looks like with a dominant center. They've seen it before, but it's kind of a world of difference in terms of that first round talent versus what we have. So it's still definitely a flaw. They've been playing better and they've been improving, but there's also other flaws to go around, which once again to me comes back more to the shooting abilities of this team.
Sherrell, same question.
Yeah, I'm not sure because there are moments where both Lubin and Washington had like some bad moments in this game, but they also had some really good moments. I thought Lubin in particular played pretty physical. He only had, if I recall correctly, he only had one time where he wasn't able to catch the ball, and even that pass was kind of low.
That ball was thrown his shins. Yes.
Yeah, he did a good job overall, I thought. And, it's weird to me, just taking it aside. Like, Raynell had great stats. He had 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 blocks. But I actually thought they did a decent job on him for a lot of the game. Like, he was cooking in the first half, for sure. But his final stat line was he took 24 shots to get his 25 points.
That's where I was going to go. Yeah,
he
was
took
12 beyond the arc.
Yeah, he took 12 threes. I don't care what era of basketball we're in. It will never be okay with me personally for my center to take 12 threes. Like, I would be incensed if I was a Stanford fan. Even if they won, I'd be like, what are you doing? Now, to his credit, he made a huge one there at the end. Anyway, that was just a non sequitur, kind of an aside. But I still think it's a huge flaw. They're doing better, but it is weird to me because every shot that Washington and Lubin take is a shot that Ian Jackson doesn't. And even when Ian Jackson
is struggling, great analysis.
Even when Ian Jackson is struggling, I still would almost 9 times out of 10 rather him have an opportunity to go to the rim or have an opportunity to dish. Now, the difference is, I think, like field goal attempts where you're taking a jump shot or you're trying to make a move versus a field goal attempt where you're just dunking or laying it up. Those kind of field goal attempts are great for Washington and Lubin. The more, the better. But I think they need to limit. Washington took the first 4 shots of the game. And then there was a stretch there where Lubin got 2 or 3 in a row. That might be a bit much. So from an offensive perspective, I think they're fine. Defensively, I still think there are some issues that their deficiencies cause. So all that to say, I still think it's probably the best or the biggest flaw in the team. But, I mean, it's like I need a colorful analogy, Joey. like a old man. I come up with something, but it's like pick your poison.
It's still kind of the tallest little person in a circus,
Yeah, there's a bunch of flaws, and unfortunately, they can't seem to root them out game to game. It's like they get one fix. Washington and Lubin are scoring and they're grabbing rebounds, and the 3-point percentage goes down. Washington and Lubin aren't playing well, the 3-point percentage goes up. They can't get the defense and Washington and Lubin and the 3-point shooting all together in concert in one game. And that's a big issue.
Did you say the whole team just can't get right? I think that's what I heard you.
That's kind of what it feels. That's kind of what it feels like.
It does feel that way, and we joke, but it does feel like, because we're sitting here in the middle of January talking about what does this team do well and what is this team's fatal flaw, and that tells you the inconsistency has been such that nobody knows. And I guarantee you that's probably some of the same things that the team and the staff are trying to figure out.
Like look at the box score, and there's no easy way to figure out why they lost. The box score is pretty even. Like,
dude, when was the last time North Carolina had 5 turnovers in a game and lost? Like, that's a curse nugget if I've ever heard one.
It was the Duke game in 2017. He tweeted it out.
Well, there we go. See, I was driving. I did not see
Well,
it. But yeah, again, like that's how do you take care of the ball that well in a game that they weren't running? Where they were playing. And Stanford is a fairly decent perimeter defense team. But how does that happen? And you still lose the game at home. Go ahead, Sean.
well, I mean, to that question, 1.06 points per possession is how to get the points
You
per
knew you
possession
were going to get in there, right? Yeah.
I mean, you watch the Kentucky Alabama game, and they're at 1.25 to 1.3.
Woo,
and
that was
they're-
sexy.
and they're elite offensively, which UNC is not. But you look at the box score, and Drake Powell played 25 minutes, 121 offensive rating. So,
And was basically MIA
But-
except for the
yeah.
last 30 seconds of the game.
yeah,
Like
three,
was on
three
the bench
shot,
for a majority of the second half.
but three shots. Once again, 3 shots within the 25 minutes. He's proven over the last few weeks that he's been able to hit shots. We talked about maybe he doesn't need to be taking 6 a game, and then he did hit the 4 out of 6 against SMU. But once again, from the back cuts, getting out in transition, what can be done to get him some easier looks and other opportunities, and then also from a rebounding perspective, with that length, I should be, it's almost like the Theo Pinson line of let's see that, the 5+ rebounds a game, and then he's able to ignite the transition or getting out just for easier baskets. So, I think in a game like this, that's probably one, just from looking at the box score perspective, one of the reasons when your starter is producing that on the offensive end.
I want to reiterate, this is the same Stanford team that lost a game to Cal Poly in the year of our Lord 2024.
Last thing, as I keep jumping in on you, Joey, but I think that's the frustrating thing, as well as it's been over the last few years, is I do think Stanford is a solid team. They've been playing better in the ACC. They have a first-round draft pick. They have a very strong coach. And the ACC teams with these losses in November that are mind-boggling when you look at them and just really kill the conference. So it does make it so hard to lose a game like this to, I think they could be not a tournament team, but just a decent team. But you're going to get killed for it because they had such a mind-boggling 1 or 2 losses early on. And it just keeps happening year over year to pretty much every team, which is, to me, a very frustrating aspect of this time of year.
Yeah, but if they were in a different conference, it'd be just because the other conference is so good. I'm not saying the ACC has good basketball this year. That's
But
don't
the other conference would not have lost those games. So,
well, I also agree, but I think the gassing of other conferences while the ACC is down is a little tough to take. Maybe I'm old that way. Who knows? I'm also old in the sense that I love Johnny T-shirt. When you talk about venerable, when you talk about classic Carolina, what you saw against a bad Cal team looked like a classic Carolina win where they didn't have to really be any good and still won by 20+ points. You did not see that against Stanford. But if you want to see classic Carolina, go to Johnny T-shirt and buy the gear that makes you think of the days when every game was more about how much are they going to win by rather than are they. And so I would encourage you to go to johnnytshirt.com. Stop by. North Carolina does have another home game coming up against Boston College very, very soon. I think there's a lot of opportunities to come in and get your own gear, even if the result of the game isn't what you wanted. Inside Carolina Premium subscribers know they get an extra 10% off the top with the code found on the premium message boards. Use it. Save the money. Be glad your friends here at the Coast to Coast, your favorite podcast, told you to do so. I'll take a break. There'll be some national ads in here. If you're watching us on video, you're not going to miss anything. It's the Coast to Coast podcast. I'm Joey Powell for InsideCarolina.com. So, guys, I'm going to try to take a little different angle here. I think the North Carolina is squarely a bubble team, whether you think they're on the bubble or not. I think this is a bubble team, and I think by the time the ACC conference season is over, that's probably going to bear itself out. I want to ask you, what can North Carolina do, if anything? And if the answer is nothing, tell me nothing. What can North Carolina do to get through this next stretch? Because we're talking about at Wake Forest on Tuesday night. Game against Boston College that, as Sherrell said, they should win, air quotes. And then you've got that 4-game just skull dragger against Pitt, Duke, Pitt, Clemson. And I watched Clemson play against Pittsburgh, and Clemson hit unofficially 273 three-pointers. They were not really good inside the arc, but if you make that many threes in the game, you're not going to lose a lot. And it took them to overtime, but that's I don't even know that this is the same Clemson team that we've talked about for the last 20 years, where they're hot as a popcorn fart in January, and then by 1st of February they're falling off a cliff. Who knows? Right now, I know they're playing incredibly well. Guys, I want to ask you, Sean, I'll throw it to you first. What can North Carolina do to acquit themselves well and get through that stretch of games, or is it more just simply about fixing themselves?
To me, I'm not even looking at that stretch yet, because that is going to be a challenge. Because I think if they can win at Wake Forest, it doesn't solve all their issues by any means, but it especially with the lack of margin for error. I probably would have had them losing to Wake, beating Stanford, but really, to me, the Wake Forest game is not a must-win. But given how poorly they played at Wake the past 2 years and what's happened down there, to me, will be a very, very telling game on the road against a team that's been playing definitely better as of late, with Hunter Salas, who's a very talented player, and can they bounce back and play well? So if we're here next week and they went 1-1, then we're kind of in the same boat as we are right now, going into what could be an 0-4, it could be a 2-2, it could be a 1-3, whatever that could be. But to me, the Wake Forest game, getting a win, and then we can figure out how they go in February.
All right, I don't want to be accused of looking ahead, so I will take that answer and I will adjust my own perspective here as I ask a question to Sherrell. Sherrell, what can North Carolina do to get rid of this bad, Q3 loss at home to Stanford?
There's nothing they can do to get rid of it. It's on the record. It's stained. It's there. Sealed, shipped, delivered, faxed, whatever you want to call it. It's there. So you have to build one game at a time. That sounds cliche, and it's what the players say after the game, but there is some truth in it. They have to go to Winston-Salem. They have to erase what happened Saturday night and try to start a new season. They have, 14 games left in the regular season, and there's not a number they need to get to. They just need to find a way to win Tuesday. And when you get through Tuesday, you rest and you find a way to win Saturday. And you just have to approach the season like that, because the pressure that they're already feeling can be compounded when you start thinking about, right now they're 35 in net and they've only got 4 Q1 opportunities left, so they've got to beat Wake Forest. And, you start whispering that to yourself, and that adds pressure in games, whether or not, they actually believe it. It's there. It's subconscious. It's there. So I think that's really what they need to do. And then to get those wins, I want you to repeat after me, Joey. Look at Roy Williams in your background and say, defend.
Neighbor? Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Please tell me you're going to say defend in intensity.
No, just defend.
All right, Coach. Defend.
To exhaustion.
Till exhaustion.
Defend. To exhaustion.
To exhaustion.
It's really simple. It's really simple, guys.
It triggers everything else. It is that simple.
It does, and I hate to say that because basketball can be a complex game, but basketball is also a very simple game. You want to dictate your strengths on the other team. You want them to force them to play the way you want them to play, which against Stanford they did not do. Stanford dictated tempo. Stanford was walking the ball up. They were calling timeouts at the 8:44, so they knew there was going to be one at 7:56. Like they had it nailed down. And Carolina did not enforce its will on Stanford. The only way for UNC to be an NCAA tournament team moving forward is they have to defend every possession like it is Game 7 of the NBA Finals, like it's a national championship game. They have to secure that missed shot if they're able to get it with a rebound, and then they can push tempo, which is what they are really, really good at.
That's what they want to do anyway.
Right. So the only way, it's like, obviously I'm a Cowboys fan. Everybody knows that. But one thing they always talk about when you have like Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and Uzi, all these guys who are good at rushing the passer, they say, well, you have to defend the run to earn the right to rush the passer. You have to defend on the perimeter and secure the rebound for the right to push in tempo and transition and get to the rim and do all the flashy, fun things that you love to do. So if they don't defend to exhaustion, they're not making the NCAA tournament. They're not going to do anything of consequence. If they're able to turn it up defensively and not just do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 25 minutes, but do it for 36, 37, 40, then they have a chance. But if they don't, they don't. I mean, to me, it's just that simple.
Yeah, it's been a thing for me this year also. It's defending and energy, and I think that a lot comes off of that because that will, to your point, Cheryl, that will make up for a lot of poor execution on the offensive end. Is just being able to outrun or being able to out hustle your opponents. And there's been way too many times where, matter of fact, there just hasn't been enough times where we have seen that from North Carolina. Go ahead.
Right. Who cares about a half-court set if you're in transition running and you're getting to the free throw line?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you're not going to be able to run every single possession, but the more you defend, the more opportunities you have, the more possessions there are, the more your talent has a chance to come through. I mean, it's again, I don't mean to Neanderthal it and make it sound like this is a
It is a
game
bit knuckle dragging though.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is
like,
that simple. I think
it's that simple. Yeah.
Yeah, and I assume that if the staff knew what could make this team defend more aggressively more often, they would have pulled that lever. Sean, is there a strategic or lineup change that North Carolina can make to maybe get more of that defensive intensity?
I think we're all out of lineup changes at this point in time. They've tried a lot. To me, it goes back to how they started that second half of Florida, which I don't think we have really seen that type of intensity unless they were down 18 points against Dayton in Miami or 13 in Maui, 13 plus to Michigan State, which goes to the earlier point. They almost play more aggressive when they're down versus up, but a lot of that did come from Seth Trimble. Obviously, he has been coming off the bench, but you don't want to take Ian out. So I think it's just from a person, especially on the perimeter. I did like today that they were starting to press at least softly a little bit more. Not that it resulted in turnovers, but I think if they can do a little more of that consistently, but it's going to take Cadeau and RJ and Ian getting into their man, as well as Trimble getting into their man early, pick them up a little higher, and getting to that 30-second mark. One of the final possessions, I thought they played very good defense. The Stanford's driving to the right, out of control, and you could say 15 seconds they played great defense, but then all of a sudden, they get it driving on the right wing. They have a step on Seth Trimble, and they didn't fully execute that possession. So I think it does go to Sherrell's. It's more not the connectivity, but more the mental focus, which I'd say is probably not the team's strongest aspect overall.
Yeah. And right after I asked, what is the strategic lever they can pull? You're right. There's probably not a place they can make a lineup change at this point, but I do think, going back to what Sherrell said earlier on, it could be about how are guys being deployed over the course of a game at all. And Sherrell, I did not give you enough propers earlier. Kudos on making everything come back to the Cowboys. That's a hell of an art form there. Guys, before we get out of here and put a bow on this, I'm going to tell everybody I'm in a terrible mood to record this show tonight. So I appreciate everybody's patience. Appreciate Sherrell and Sean letting me tweet through it. Guys, before we do our 2 cents sponsored by Congruity, want to see where you expect things to go this coming week. Sean said, 1-1 would be a nightmare. Sherrell, yes. Wake Forest is one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. Is that something North Carolina can capitalize on, or is it less about the opponent and more about North Carolina?
Oh, that's a famous last words situation if we've ever seen it. Like,
yeah,
we're just texting on the side, and I said Wake is one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country, and Sean said until they get hot this week, and it's a fair point because again, I'm team no double, but when Stanford shooters got open, when UNC did double, they knocked them down pretty regularly, especially the young kid, the freshman. I think he was 3 of 3. So can Wake Forest guys like Hildreth, he's been there forever.
I was gonna say that dude played with Rusty LaRue.
Yeah, so can he make a shot? Can Juke Harris, the freshman, make a shot? Because they're gonna give a lot of attention to Salas. So it's a matter of can Wake make those 3-point shots that UNC is probably going to give them open when they double or if they decide to double.
And don't let the tie-dye fool y'all. Wake hates Carolina. Like, just absolutely hates them with a passion of 1,000 suns. It's not something I think people recognize because, Wake's just kind of like, to use an old Mark Packer term, they're kind of like Switzerland. They're over there. They're neutral. They don't really get anybody's attention. But I'm telling y'all, Wake hates North Carolina and would like nothing more than to pour a little salt in the wound or throw a Macho Man Randy Savage elbow right into UNC's grundle on Tuesday night in Lawrence Joel. All right, boys. Two pennies time. Two pennies time? Yeah, 2 pennies time. Go ahead and putting this out here now. I think that that folks who listen to the show know how we feel about Congruity. It's a little early for Valentine's for us to profess our love to anyone or anything. But I want you guys to love Congruity. Congruity does a lot for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, and why should your business be any different? Why should you not receive the benefits of having somebody that's on your side trying to help your company run as optimally as possible? Why would you not want that in your portfolio? Email matt@congruityhr.com. Good folks, they have taken their business from a small operation to a national brand. If that's what you want for your company, email Matt. He'll tell you whether or not they can help you do it by cleaning up and making your back office process in your business a lot more efficient. Do it, matt@congruity.com. Boys, give me 1 penny each. Sherrell, 1 cent, part of our 2 cents, brought to you by Congruity. Go, sir.
So recruiting news. So UNC was out on the road last week. They saw Tony Bryant, who is a 6'9", 6'10" forward down in Tampa. I think they really like him. Would not be surprised if he was the next offered player in the 2026 class. So big news there. And then, of course, I guess the biggest news is that Caleb Wilson is announcing his decision on Thursday. Venue and time TBD, but you can probably check the premium board for more information on that. Since it is public, Travis Branham, who we believe in and we trust, and
we like. He's an all-around good guy. Uses both his left and right turn signal indicators. Good human.
Correct. And we liaise and generally have similar information. He's put a crystal ball in for Wilson to commit to UNC. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. That means that's Travis' feeling at the moment. We have similar information, but you don't know until you know. So Thursday is when Wilson will announce. Again, he's a top 10 forward from Atlanta, Georgia, 6'9.5", 6'9", depending on who you ask. Very athletic, and it would be a big win for UNC, the program, at a time they really need it.
All right, Sean. I would also like to see 1 thinly pressed cent from you, sir.
I'm just going to go in terms of the freshmen, how they play against at Wake Forest. Ian Jackson finally struggled after numerous great games in a row, and you look at their combined stat sheet offensively, 2 of 11 from the field. So, did that math right? So how are they going to bounce back? I think for this team, we need them both playing well, with Ian at 15 plus points and Drake, I'd say at least in the 8 plus range, but needing them making impacts when they're in, and that is a lot to ask for 2 freshmen, but both are very talented and have high expectations. So looking forward to seeing how they play against Wake Forest, and I think that'll be a big determinant in terms of the outcome of that game coming up this week.
Sorry, Sean's trying to deal with some messages from might have been somebody asking for the Johnny T-shirt coupon code. Who knows? Sean, before we get out of here, who do you think North Carolina tries to put on Hunter Salas?
That obviously Trimble when he's in the game, but if they're running the starting lineup, I'm going to have Ian on him, just with the with the size. Could be trouble in some of the other situations, but I think you have Salas and Hildreth, so there's going to be a height advantage. And Hildreth, I think, will try to get whether it's RJ or Cadeau in the post, but you could potentially have Cadeau on him early to try to put pressure on him. But I would try to put size on him from the beginning, and then you can switch off with Trimble when he comes in the game. But it'll be interesting to see how they manage that throughout the game.
One note, Joey, I'm just going to read some stuff. Salas's last, I guess this is 7 games, 27 points, 26 points, 23 points, 20
Good
points,
God.
22 points, 30 points, 24 points.
Think he's feeling it?
He's feeling it.
He's feeling it.
I think it goes to, if he's going to get his 20 to 30, are the other guys helping out, or are they struggling? So,
or are they watching? Yeah, that's a pretty good analysis. All right, well, I think we've pretty much emptied out the decanter here. Guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for carrying your host when he was in a really sour mood. I promise I will work on it, and I will get back to you, the listener. For Sherrell McMillan, for Sean Moran, I'm Joey Powell. This has been another episode of the Coast to Coast podcast. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity for sponsoring, John Siegley for producing. And until next time, we'll see you again very soon here on InsideCarolina.com.